Ikim FM is Percy Utama Anda. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good afternoon to our dear listeners of Ikim FM. Welcome to another new episode of Seeking Sakinah, where a radio program that talks about love, relationships, and also marriage. And in this show, we tell it to those who are newlyweds or if simply just anyone who are looking to enhance the understandings of love, and our aims is to empower you with practical advice and insights to cultivate the essence of Sakina, Mawada, Warahmah. And I would like to introduce the man of the show himself, Brother Edris Khamissa. Assalamualaikum, Brother Idris.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you, Brother Idris?
Very well, always excited to be in the studio with you to share this platform, inshallah. And I think, like your good self, we hope that we will leave a legacy, that we would restore the institution of marriage, creating people confidence about it, to inspire young people to get married. And the older people, we want to rekindle their passion. We want them to fall in love again, to tell their wife, right, my darling, oh, when I look at you, baby, and I like it.
MashaAllah. So, Brother Idris, we have talked a lot in the previous conversation. We talked about building a social connection with your spouse. For today here, I remember in that conversation we talk about maintaining individuality. So that is what we are going to talk about for today. Specifically, not just maintaining that individuality in marriage, but also we like to relate it on about coping with life transitions together, especially for those who just got married, and also in creating, in having that daily routine, as it is one of the first things that should be done whenever you got into marriage life. And of course, all these things are should be given emphasis on and concern, because a healthy, balanced relationship, when we talk about individuality, right, it allows both of you, you and your spouse, to pursue personal growth, hobbies, and also patience. And these things can actually help to enrich the relationship itself by keeping the dynamic and having a fresh perspective. And also, when we talk about coping life transitions together, such as the career changes, having children, so it has quite drastic changes, right? So we need to know how you should adapt yourself into it. All right. Okay. So as a starting for today's conversation, right, let's look at the topic itself, maintaining individuality. What does it mean by that? Because I thought that marriage is about doing everything together.
Yes, the important things that in marriage, there are many things we need to do together, but some things we need to pursue. All of us have different interests, and the point that you referred to was hobbies.
Yes.
One of the questions I often ask people in a workshop, who are you? Often some people say, I'm Mrs. So-and-so. I say to them, I didn't ask you whether you're married. Who are you? I'm so-and-so's daughter. I said, I didn't ask you who's your father. Who are you? I'm a doctor. I didn't ask you what's your profession. So the best answer I got, I'm nothing but a humble servant of Allah. And that's important, that in the marriage, you must have an opportunity to serve Allah.
Yes.
And there are some things you need to do so that you can leave a legacy. You need to get involved in the community. You need to uplift yourself. You need to grow and everything else that happens. And there are some things you can support each other in that growth. I can support my wife. She has a particular interest. I'll support her. Give her the space to do that. I don't say to her, you only do what I ask you to do. That kind of chauvinistic attitude and whatnot, something that is contrary to what we're supposed to believe in. So I think this is important. Many people say this, and I think they need to accept responsibility. You know what they say? Darling, I got married to you. I gave up everything for you. I gave everything for you. But who asked you to give everything up for him? Right? We're not saying that it is not a commitment. It is a commitment.
It is commitment.
But you cannot do this at the expense of your own well-being. This is something that I find, problematic,
It's not just merely sacrificing yourself, right?
Yeah.
So you need to have to know that what can be sacrificed onto and what you need to reserve for yourself. It's not mean that you have to do every single thing together.
And in fact, unless your personal interest is impacting on the marriage, that's another matter altogether. So therefore, one of the things that I always recommend is to have a weekly routine.
Weekly routine.
And in that routine, you have opportunities, both of you, to pursue your personal interests in that way. You're doing it, and your spouse is also doing it.
So for the things you mentioned about the personal space, right? What are the things, or maybe some this advice and for our listeners out there, on especially for the couples who just got married, to identify what are the things that they can do together and what are the things that they need to put aside. Except when we're talking about the personal hobbies and also personal career.
Yeah, you see, for example, no one can say that I know my spouse inside out, especially at the beginning of the marriage. I think it's important to say, you know what, darling, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do? So you give an opportunity for her to pursue those hobbies, right? And similarly, you look at what you do, and maybe sometimes some of your hobbies you can say, you know what, I think it'd be a good hobby for me also.
Similarity.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I like to also pursue that. I always had it in my heart, but I never had the opportunity in that way. Now, what happens, for example, that when you are imposing a particular hobby on your spouse, that can be problematic because it creates a lot of resentment. So I think in the end, it'd be great. I hope my brothers and sisters who are listening to this program, I hope you have personal interests. I hope you love who you are, your own individuality, and that's important, right?
It's like it is okay to pursue personal interest. For example, like if you like fishing, that doesn't mean that once you got married, you can no longer go fishing, right?
Yeah, but the point is you can't spend every day going fishing, right?
You need to allocate that some time for your family too. So it's important here to have that balance between your personal time and also spending time with your family. And I'd like to further into the conversation and sharing my personal experience. Since I'm still new to this married life, right? I actually initially find it difficult to comprehend and also accept that now my life is now intertwined with someone else. This quite when initially it's quite awkward to have someone else being inside my room because I used to sleep alone, and transitioning it is not easy for me because in the previous episode I mentioned that I'm an introvert person while my husband is an extrovert. So in balancing that, I found it quite some of the things might get me get irritated. So what is your advice on that?
In fact, you highlight a very significant point. I think often our male counterparts do not fully appreciate, especially the changes the wives have to make. In one of our workshops that we did, we had married couples there. So I said to them, we said to them, I would like you to speak to your wife, and each one is having a separate conversation. And I said, now I want her to speak first, and I want her to tell you what adjustments she has made in this marriage. You will not believe this. Many of them break down because they have never ever expressed this to their husband. And the husbands get a shock of their life. They said, I did not know you went through all of this. You know what I mean? Because you are a princess in your own home.
Yes.
And you have left that home, where you had the emotional support, spiritual support, and you are here sharing a space with someone else who comes from a different background. So I think that's important for us to understand that. But the other critical aspect, how quickly you adjust and adapt, depends largely also on your self-esteem. If you got high self-esteem, it's easier to adapt and change, You understand? But if you got low self-esteem, it becomes far more difficult. And if you got low self-esteem, then you need to have really a caring husband who
MashaAllah.
nurtures and understands. So I think it's important uh, for a man, especially whose wife is going to join him at his own home, to create the transition. And how does he also do that? He's also engaging with his family. That the family as a whole need to support that. You might be staying with your in-laws, for
Yeah.
example,
Yes.
and you say, you know what, inshallah, I'm going to get married, and please, please support me in all of this. Make sure, that she's comfortable at home and all of that. So when, as a family, they do all of that, it makes a difference.
MashaAllah.
I mean, can you imagine now, you are in the family home, you are in that home, and they are there, and but they're not warm towards you, and all of that. What does it do to you? It really impacts, it impinges on that marriage. So the issue of transition is very important. And also, I think it's good that as a person, you need to also engage others before you marry, asking them, a friend of yours, tell me, you married for so many years. Tell me what milestones in your life, she'll say to you, you know what, the first few weeks can be very, very tough, right? But
Yes.
afterwards you get used to it. And in that way, it's very reassuring.
Allah.
Mm.
And talking specific into coping with love transitions together. So you mentioned that before the marriage itself, you already need to study about the love that you are going
Yeah.
to go through, and also you need to identify. I believe that you need to understand the personality of your spouse first before you can able to adapt to it. And going furthering into that, I would say it is not easy because I'm experiencing that coping that life transition, and I realized that I began to change my personality or some of the routine that I used to do. For example, that I used to go for a jog in the evening. For example, just merely as an example. But now that I'm married, I no longer have time for that. Now I have to spend time with my husband, and now I have my husband who is so I would say really like to get everything together with me, but at the same time I would like to create that boundary. So how can I make it clear to my spouse that there are some things that I prefer to do it together, and there are some of the things that I want to do it alone?
Yeah.
So how to create these
Yeah.
boundaries?
Yeah. You see, the whole thing is this. It also depends on trust issues. It also depends on his own self confidence. That's important. Now, some people will feel very insecure when you create that kind of boundary. And you say, but why? Why? There are things that you want to do together, and there are other things, although we don't want to do it together, I like you to be present. I got no issue with that. But there's one thing that I want to do on my own. It's for me. It's something that I like, something that gives me personal fulfillment. And I think that kind of conversation you should have. And I think if you're married to the right person, and you yourself are the right person, that makes a huge, huge difference. And because one of the things, the legacies we should be able to leave behind, is the fact that you say, you know what, I was so happy that I married him. He allowed me to grow personally. He gave me the space, and we had our boundaries, and we respectfully, ensured we did not, encroach into those boundaries.
And it means that you need to know that what kind of boundaries that you should be give up onto. And here in the previous conversation we talk about the how much you can sacrifice. You need to know it's not means that it doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice everything. There are things that you can sacrifice, and some things that you don't have to. And it's often when we look at into the conversation, it seems like many women out there are feeling sad that they cannot practice things that they used to do when they were young, and now that they have to adapt to new kind of routine,
Mm.
it can be challenging for them, especially now we transition into the conversations of having daily routine. So here now, then once you got married, you have to create new daily routine with your husband. So what will be your advice on those couples that trying to establish a daily routine in their life?
You see, there are a few things. The one thing is this, uh, that if there was something that you used to do that gave you a lot of fulfillment,
Mm,
and if your spouse allows you to do that,
mm,
then what happens? It enhances the marriage.
mm,
It makes a difference. The
mm,
other thing is this, that when you and your spouse sit down together,
mm,
developing those routines,
mm,
uh, you know what? It's an opportunity for you to be creative. It's an opportunity for you to express what you really feel without
mm,
feeling a sense of intimidation. I
mm.
just give you a quick example. Besides, they say a family that eats together, plays together,
Yeah.
and prays together stays together.
Mm,
So that's one part of it. But then you say to yourself, uh, without it becoming too hectic, that on a Monday evening,
mm.
let us do this together.
Ah.
On a Tuesday, let us do this. On a
Mm,
Wednesday, let us do this.
mm.
Thursday, Friday, you understand some
Yes.
common things.
Ah.
Or then you say, okay, you know what? Maybe on a Wednesday evening,
Mm,
allow me to pursue my personal interests, and you do the same thing
mm-hmm,
in that way. And you sit down and think about it, then you are living consciously and with intentionality.
mm,
It making a big difference. What you are really doing is investing in yourself and in the marriage, and
mm,
that's important.
mm,
That is fundamental, because in the end, if your spouse does not allow you to grow, then
mm.
the marriage will not grow.
Yeah.
And then what will happen? It will create bitterness. And you say,
Mm.
why should I invest in this marriage? I got
Ah.
a husband here,
Mm,
he's only concerned about his own ego. As
mm,
long as I massage his ego, he's very happy.
mm-hmm. I see. Um, Again, I would like to talk about the maintaining individuality, because it can create that stress and also tension, right? Whenever you try to create the boundaries of what we should do together and what should not. And going into that, I would say that okay, the first in previously we talked about whenever we did just two of them now, but now that for example there's a career change or having children, what are some advice on how can they give and take or trying to balance that individuality, but now that not only they have to share with their spouse but also with their children.
I think it's important. Sometimes when children come into play, that should become part of your joint focus attention.
Mm.
Kids need that. And for that period, you say, you know what? I'll sacrifice my personal interests. I'll focus on the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Right, number one. The
Yeah.
second important thing, and this is very, very critical,
Mm.
is the fact that if you are not allowed to pursue your personal interests, then you're going to have resentment.
Mm.
You're going to be preoccupied. So
Mm.
I think it's important about realigning your priorities.
Mm.
It's about you talking about it,
Mm.
and that's important. You see, in the end, it it all depends on the self-esteem of your spouse.
Mm.
It depends on his maturity
Mm.
and also his emotional intelligence, how he's able to deal with another perspective, another point of view.
Mm.
And I think that is fundamental.
Mm-hmm. So means that in marriage you need to be ready to change yourself, right? This-
Correct. Yeah, that's
Mm.
that's important.
Mm.
It's about growth.
Mm-hmm.
It's about
Growth.
growth.
Yeah.
And you find that when you are young, when you're not encumbered with any burden or
Mm.
whatever, you are a free spirit.
Mm.
And it's true, the same thing happened to me.
Mm.
I was a free spirit. After I got married, I said, wow, now I'm going to tell my wife where I'm going to, what time I'm coming back home,
Mm.
because I was staying on my own
Mm.
at that time, right? So you are your own kind of boss, but now you have a relationship, and it is a relationship that is a sacred institution of
Yes.
marriage, right? So I think that is fundamental. So the long and short of it all is that some people have not adapted to the institution of marriage. Some
Uh-huh.
people want to continue their hedonistic, selfish, individualistic life, and you can't do both.
Yeah.
You can't do both. There has to be, in fact, you get freedom within the institution of marriage. And that freedom is a halal freedom. That institution is an institution that will help you, inshallah, to attain eternal bliss,
Yes, yes, inshallah. Um, Going back to you talk about incorporating life transitions together. It is important for the extended families, for the family itself, to support the life transitions. So, can you share with our audience, to our listeners, like how important it is other people's involvement in helping you in furthering, in going through the life transition? Because I kind of like find it quite difficult to grasp that having to involve someone else into that life transitions.
You know what? We are social beings,
Mm.
and we learn from other people,
Yes.
and we need everyone's support. I mean, no person can attribute his success
Yeah.
to himself. Of course, you need to acknowledge Allah, but
Mm.
you would say there were people in my life that were my support.
Mm.
When I was down and out, they uplifted me.
Mm.
They gave me great advice, because they say, religion is nasiha, isn't
Yes.
it? So these are important things.
Mm.
And in fact, what will happen, for example, let us say you are expecting, right?
Mm.
And automatically your mom and dad will be there. Your mom will be there guiding you, automatic, and you
Yes.
mustn't feel that you're imposing yourself. In fact, you'll be
Mm.
in a situation one day to advise other people, and
Mm-hmm.
that's important. But what should that should come naturally.
Yes.
Naturally. So let us say, for example,
Ah.
someone is, of someone, young person getting married,
Mm.
and you say to the person, you know them well enough, he says, you know what, let me give you some advice about marriage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you give them proper advice.
Giving
In that
tips.
way, what does it do? It gives them a truer perspective of the institution of marriage. It does not give them a false picture of purely the romantic
Mm-hmm.
aspect of
It's
it.
like happily ever
I have
after.
after kind of image.
Yeah.
You let them know that you're going to have challenges, and the best way to handle challenges is the following. And that way, so I think, you mustn't regard that as a burden. I think it's your responsibility. This is what Allah would expect from you, to guide someone.
Mm-hmm. And as we are reaching the end, can you share for us, would be as a final advice to our listeners out there on why they should be concerned of this, and what will happen if they don't care about it, or they don't emphasize on understanding and creating this individuality, and also in establishing daily routine together.
Yeah, that's very important. If, for example, if you negate your individuality,
Mm-hmm.
and you are there like obsequious and just serving your spouse,
Yeah.
then in the end, you're not going to be happy.
Mm.
And especially when there are challenges, you
Mm.
say, I've invested in him, I did not invest in myself. And so I'm stunted in my growth. And in fact, you find one of the reasons for separation in marriages is a fact when one spouse outgrows the other.
Oh.
Because what happens when people get married, they're often in the same plane. And suddenly, one of them becomes spiritually stronger, reads, learns, goes for lectures and everything else. But the spouse is on another level, and you say to them, you know what, I can't communicate with you if we don't have the similar interests. So I think it's important that for both of them to grow together, but you must not sacrifice your individuality, because you must love who you are. You are a unique being. You're not your husband. You're a unique being, and understand your uniqueness and make your unique contribution to the ummah. And that is fundamental.
MashaAllah. So now, okay, now I understand the importance of growing together, because I thought that, when we talk about it, growing together is a matter of, doing anything together, and also in maturing yourself
Mm.
together, so that you are aligned, so they can communicate better, as you have the same, for example, like wave of communication. But now, like listening to that, and it gives him more understanding and onto that, and especially in marriage, I believe that jealousy can also happen. Is that correct, brother Idris?
Yes, yes, jealousy can also take place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it doesn't necessarily mean the jealousy from the outside. It
Mm-hmm.
could be from your spouse.
Yes.
Yeah, especially when you are more self assured, you're
Ah.
more self confident, you have grown, and
Mm-hmm.
suddenly what it will also do, it will create also suspicion,
Ah.
mistrust, a sense of insecurity. And
Mm.
you say, I don't like this person. You don't like this person not because of who she is, but
Mm-hmm.
because of who you are,
Oh.
because you are projecting your own insecurities on the other person. And I think
Mm.
that's important for spouses to grow together.
Mm.
And yet, sometimes it does happen that the other your spouse may be more inclined in certain ways, may be able to learn quicker than you do. That's
Mm.
fine.
Mm.
There's no issue, as long as your growth is not sabotaged or
Mm-hmm.
stifled or stunted.
Uh-huh, I see. So it is important here that the couples have to support each other and trying to accommodate, and what can they help
Mm.
to improve each other. Well, there's a quite refreshing perspective, mashallah. With that being said, I would like to thank Brother Idris for his insight on today's conversation, and we hope that the conversation that we had, going to motivate you and help you on how you can navigate in this life, and how you can improve your marriage life. And if you like to share your comment or like to share your stories, you can leave it on the comment section of this posting on Facebook and also YouTube, or you can simply just leave a WhatsApp at 01129004004. And with that being said, again, Brother Idris, thank you for being with us in the studio. Assalamualaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So, dear listeners, be sure to tuning to us next week for more conversation with our brother Edris Khamissa on Seeking Sakinah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi